Welcome to the Django video series. I'm Adam Temple.
I'm Nick.
And today we're talking about being the lead architect on your project. There's some subtlety here, and it's a perspective that I think is really important, and we just kind of want to talk through it.
Right.
I've certainly learned a lot about being the lead architect and trying to let other people be the lead architect on my behalf.
Yeah.
I guess I want to start out with an architecture quote, because building architecture has some crossover with architecting software. It's not one-to-one, but there's certainly...
Yeah.
And this was from a Joel on Software talk, and he quoted someone else. I don't know who it was. When it has the modesty not to draw attention to the difficulties it has surmounted. I like that quote because it shows architecture is something that involves art. It involves beauty. And when you have proper architecture, you have something that's functional, but functional and beautiful.
Right. And it's not really up to your developers to create the beauty of it, because they don't have all the intangible knowledge and all the background and all the, experience in whatever field you're working on to like what is truly beautiful, right? They're there to build the stuff you give them. It's up to you to pick the overall architecture of, whatever software you're doing.
And if you're expecting a developer to be a lead architect in the sense of not just deciding where objects to be placed, where methods versus functions versus overriding versus all that. But if you're expecting this out of them, you might bypass. You might be disappointed in them, even though they're a really great developer.
Right, because they're going to architect the software side of it, like where to put the literal code and how to organize it. This is like your entire project and the design of your website and like the workflows and all this kind of stuff of like the software developer isn't going to worry about that,
And it brings up Chris Anderson, he just switched over to his new business, DIY Drones.
Nice.
I think it's DIYdrones.com. He was the author of The Long Tail, and used to be the editor in Wired Magazine. And he works with this fellow who was out of Mexico, something not America. And he ended up finding a really brilliant, dedicated guy that loved building drones as a hobby, as a lifestyle, as a business.
Nice.
Well, and then he ended up hiring him. And that's kind of what you expect. You're like, I'm going to find this person, and we're going to fall in love in a business sense, and it's just going to really work out. But let's say in that example, let's say Chris Anderson had 2 years. I think it was somewhere around that, to try this guy out and to work with him and to see his skill level. Well, don't expect that out of every developer that you work with.
Right, because when you work with a developer, you might be working with them for, let's say, a month or two, and then you realize like he's really good. You're like, oh, this guy's like he gets the tickets done. He understands what I'm saying. Like, I should now probe him for a bunch of not just like how should we make this feature, but what other features should we do? Just because he's a good developer doesn't mean he's a good architect, And
you were talking about the construction example.
Right. So it's like in construction, okay, we've seen some really cool buildings, like the Beijing Olympics and all this crazy cool stadiums and all that stuff, right? There's an architect designing all this stuff. Then he hires some people to go build these complex but predefined walls or structures, right? He didn't hire some contractors and say, hey, go build this wall and design it along the way. They're just building
give me ideas.
Design.
After you build a couple, give me ideas
of some more. Like, what else would be cool? Like, we built some stuff over
And
here.
obviously, it's not a one-to-one relationship.
Right.
Architecting a building is different than agile software development. I get that. But still, there are some lines that are healthy to draw, and it will keep the relationship boundaries properly set. Let me read another quote here. This came from Bertrand Meyer. The bad ideas and the complicated ideas often appear first. It takes time for the simple and the elegant to take over.
Nice.
I love that because it's so true. And in fact, Kant echoed the very same thing. When he would get a problem, an answer to one of his problems, he would always reject out of hand the first answer that he got.
Took me 10 seconds to think of that.
That must not be the right one.
I gotta think some more.
Obviously, Kant had, it's...
Yeah.
one in a million or millions, philosopher billion. But I think there's something to be drawn from it, which is look at those things that you really admire. Maybe it's Apple, maybe it's Adobe, maybe it's Google. It takes a lot of time to make things simple and beautiful and useful and elegant.
Which, speaking of simple, one thing that developers love to do, if left to their own devices, is to just add options and add settings. I mean, they're geeks, right? We all are. I see 700 options and I'm like, ooh, customization. A user sees settings and they're like, what does all of this mean? Right? It's confusing.
How do I click save?
So
how do I go to the next page?
It's up to you as the architect to be like, no, this is what my users want, and this is what they really don't care about. You as then you got to explain that to the developer that, look, this is easy for you, but that's why I'm hiring you to build this, because you're very smart and very good with computers. My users are not. So don't leave like, oh yeah, just put whatever options, whatever settings, customization you want. They're just gonna go crazy.
And I guess to finish things up, this is a highly leveraged point. I don't want to install the Java update right now. Really? It's a highly leveraged point in your project. Because you might do this little tiny widget change, but if people are using the software, let's say thousands of people are looking at it, don't outsource this part of your software.
Right.
Outsource the parts that are more mechanical and linear. Like, if you tell them to do X, Y, and Z, they can do X, Y, and Z. That's the part that you need developers for. If you need help like coming up with a wireframe, you probably shouldn't be doing software.
Right, because you're spending a bunch of money, you have investors because they believe in your idea. They don't believe that you have friends that have ideas, right? It's like, you have this idea, it's yours. So don't expect a developer to come in and suddenly make your idea way better, because he just does what you tell him. He's not an idea guy.
And don't discount that person, because he or she might be a very good developer, but they're not the business partner you're looking for. Well, you're not paying them like a business partner, so shut up and move on and get over it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should close with a Gustav Eiffel quote. Must it be assumed that because... I'm trying to be noble.
Hey, whatever.
Must it be assumed that because we are engineers, beauty is not our concern? And that, while we make our constructions robust and durable, we do not also strive to make them elegant? The first principle of architectural aesthetics is that the essential lines of a monument must be determined by a perfect adaptation to its purpose. Gustav Eiffel.
Good times.
So there, we hope you enjoyed our Being a Lead Architect video for this Django Startup series.
Thanks, guys.